My name is Maddie. I'm involved in volleyball, basketball, and softball. I'm also involved in TFCA, FCA, and Link Crew Leader.
I'm Clary. I'm involved in volleyball and track.
I'm Pischke, and I'm involved in football and track, and also take 2 AP classes and 2 college classes.
I'm Chapman, and I am in soccer and baseball.
I'm Jenna. I play volleyball and soccer. I'm in TFCA, FCA, Bass Fishing Club, and I'm taking 2 AP classes.
I'm Erin, Starkey. I'm involved in tennis and gymnastics. I'm also involved in the foreign language club, TFCA, FCA, and Bass Fishing Club, and I'm taking 4 AP classes and 1 college class.
So as you can see, we are involved in a lot of activities, and that gives us a lot of things that stress us out. So our essential problem is that students are under too much stress. Students do in fact have large amounts of stress in their day-to-day lives. Society today claims that getting a college education from a prestigious university is necessary to get a well-paying job and to be considered successful. Therefore, what colleges want often dictates the various pressures on the students. There simply are not enough hours in the day to accomplish all that society expects of them. This means the majority of student population is not getting enough time to take the action that are most important in keeping healthy. Whether that be involved as eating, sleeping, or exercising, they don't have enough time to do these things, causing physical and psychological health issues. There has been many speculations on what measures to take in order to correct the issues at hand. Many have proposed banning homework or at least limiting it. Some claim that any amount of homework past a certain point actually does no good for the student themselves. Top performing high schoolers are beginning to experiment with these types of techniques, increasing as we see the effects that excess stress has on teenagers. Even though an overload of stress is detrimental, pressure in general is necessary for success. Many students lack the motivation and ambition to strive to be as well as they possibly can in school, without some incentive or pressure. Whether this is their parents telling them they need to go to college and get into a successful college, or a teacher lecturing them if they're doing poorly on a test. Students respond to much strain from many different sources. Without having much stress in their life, they become unproductive and may never achieve their goals in life. The final issue that students have with homework is there just simply isn't enough time in the day. Extracurricular activities such as sports or band and music shows us why homework can take more out of a student than some can think. Having teachers that understand what high school students go through is the first step in helping to improve this problem.
Students clearly have pressures from various different sources. High schoolers typically go to school for around 7 hours a day to learn and be tested. However, the schoolwork does not stop at that, for students are often assigned what seems like sometimes endless homework. According to a survey by Denise Clark Pope, students in 10 upper middle class community high schools averaged over 3 hours of homework each night. Many students would agree that homework and studying is where the most of their stress comes from. This is due to the fact that many parents and colleges put such an emphasis on achieving good grades that students' health comes in second priority. Additionally, the majority of students in high school become involved in many activities in order to have fun or to look well-rounded for college. Many students can spend anywhere from 1 to 3 hours a night just on a sport alone. On top of that are any clubs, committees, organizations, or activities the student may be involved in. Not to mention, many teenagers have to work at jobs after school in order to help their families financially or to pay for college in the future. These activities often become too much for students to handle. Students find themselves with so little time to take care of themselves that their health is deteriorating. Eating, sleeping, exercising, and relaxing take a back seat in many students' lives, causing physical and psychological health issues. Anxiety and depression levels have risen in the student population over the past decades. This suggests that some recent trend has caused these students psychological damage, and many suspect that stress is to be the only probable cause. The Center for epidemiologic studies depression scale and the state trait anxiety inventory concluded that 54% of students showed moderate to severe symptoms of depression and 80% suffered moderate to severe symptoms of anxiety. These types of stress-induced problems illustrate that many students do not have the time they need to keep themselves healthy. The average teen sleeps about 7.4 hours on school nights, which is not near the recommended amount of 8.5 hours. This inherent lack of sleep not only raises stress levels, but also weakens the body's immune system, making it more susceptible to sickness. 20% of teens report exercising less than once a week or not at all, and 39% say they skip a meal at least once a week or more due to stress. Some experts claim that students' levels of stress rival that of adults. Such assumptions force people to beg the question whether or not society should be working to lower the pressure put on students. If we were to do so, our efforts should clearly be centered around homework or school because that is what is causing the most stress on top of everything else in the kids' lives. An academic workload is something easily controlled by an administrative policy.
After analyzing the problem, we need to come up with a solution criteria in order to decide the best one. In order to do this, the solution must abide by the following criteria. It must cover all aspects of the problem, it must be testable, it must be comparable to other research, and it must solve or help the problem. Back to the first criteria, it must cover all aspects of the problem. All conditions and loopholes should be accounted for in order to know that it is the best solution. The second criteria is that it must be testable. It must be testable through research such as surveys and experiments. The third one is it must be comparable to existing research. When compared to existing research, you should be able to tell what the problem is and if it is fixed. And if it's not fixed, then you should figure out a way to tweak it so that it is the best solution. Finally, it must help or solve the problem, which seems pretty obvious. We came to the conclusion that the best solution to solving the problem of stress on students will also need to follow these following rules. It will limit stress and depression among high school students. Because too much stress is the issue at hand, our first priority is to diminish the amount of pressure that high schoolers feel. The limit of stress and depression among high school students can be easily tested through surveys and administrative observation. There's plenty of existing research that focuses on the stress levels of teenagers to compare to new research too. Also, teenagers are a very popular study group. Studies have been conducted on everything from the social lives to the personal health of teenagers. Secondly, students will get more sleep. As mentioned in the analysis of the problem, to perform their best, high schoolers need at least 8.5 hours of sleep per night, but are only getting 7.4. Sleep is necessary for the functioning of the brain. Without it, we are not only mentally weakened, but also physically. The effect of our solution of the sleep of teenagers is easily testable and comparable. Once again, much research has been conducted to find the average amount of sleep that teenagers received and the effect it has on their performance in school and extracurriculars. Students getting more sleep would definitely help the problem because it would strengthen their physical and mental being. The more sleep people get, the better the body functions.
There are an abundance of ways for the administration and teachers to lower the amount of homework given each night to lessen the stress on students. Conducting the 10-minute test is a good place to start. The 10-minute test is when in first grade you should only have 10 minutes of homework, and in second grade there should be 20, and for third graders there should be 30, and so on. Based on the 10-minute test, teenagers in high school should have around an hour to 2 hours of homework. But still this is a bit excessive for some students. Changing the amounts of homework given may be the answer to relieving the stress on students. Teachers can change the amount of homework given each night. The teachers can give out less homework but harder problems. A psychologist pointed out that having less but challenging homework is still beneficial to students compared to a prolonged amount. An experiment where the teacher cut down the homework load but made the work harder showed that test scores didn't change.
This shows that having a lighter workload with difficult problems has the same effect as a burdensome amount of homework. Giving out more challenging problems will demand the students to think a little harder, therefore making the other problems moderately easier. They will be able to utilize the information gained from the harder problems to be able to fly through the easier problems. Teachers can collaborate on when to give homework. When distributing homework, teachers should converse on what homework they are giving and how much, so students aren't overwhelmed with multiple large tasks in one night. The teachers should discuss how heavy their homework load will be for the day, so other teachers know how much homework they should give or shouldn't give. If there will be a glut amount of homework one night, the teachers should confer about how to distribute the homework so it isn't given all in one night. Teachers should communicate on what days they are giving the students tests so they aren't all on the same day. This will benefit the students because then they aren't all trying to cram every bit of information for each subject into their heads in one night. This will release the stress of cramming because then they don't have to worry about possibly taking 7 different tests in one day. The administration can initiate ways to make students' lives easier. The administration can establish a time where students can come in to do relaxing activities to take the stress off. The school can institute a yoga class offered to students who are under a confusion amount of stress. Yoga is a calming activity that will help take the stress off of students for a long period of time. Then they will be more calm when doing homework and complete it more thoroughly. Students will also benefit from yoga considering stress is revealed in many different ways. For example, neck pain, sleeping problems, and headaches are just a few distinct signs of stress. Also, it may be beneficial to introduce a meditation hour in the school to allow kids to evolve into a more relaxing state of mind. Meditation and harmonious breathing is a way to improve mental well-being and creates an excess of clarity in the mind. The mental benefits include calmness, relief of chronic stress patterns, and it sharpens concentration. They can also change the class schedules. The administration may consider doing block scheduling or a different type of scheduling in order to have less classes per day. Since there will only be a few classes per day, the students will only have a few classes of homework to worry about each night. Requiring a few easy classes may be smart for some students who overload on the advanced classes. If you are constantly scheduling hard classes for yourself, then maybe it's time some easier classes are merited. Taking a few easier classes will help to balance the hard versus easy homework. If the homework load is not changed, then some students need to understand that school comes first. Some students involved in multiple sports or extracurriculars may need to think about the possibility of dropping some of these outside activities. School needs to come first for those who are struggling with the stress of homework and also dealing with the excess of extracurriculars they are involved in. Sports and other activities take time away from students who need to complete homework. Having late games, practices, or meetings takes the students' time away from completing homework and makes them stay up later and not complete their homework to the best of their ability. Students need to understand that some sacrifices need to be made, and they need to be able to recognize when these sacrifices are necessary. There are abundance of possibilities to resolve the stress put on students. Especially because with homework, students have an extensive amount of stress. There are ways to work around having less homework, but these changes need to happen in order for them to be beneficial.
After examining all our possible solutions, we have decided why one is much better than the rest. It is not a logical decision to completely eliminate homework, so we decided on a solution that would best reduce the amount of stress and will still allow kids to apply what they've learned in class on assignments. Solution number 1 was to keep the same amount of homework but reduce the involvement in extracurricular activities. This solution would work because students would have to be able to devote more time to homework, but the solution would not allow kids to be in extracurricular activities that look very good on college applications and make them a more well-rounded student. Students also find joy in their extracurricular activities, which they don't find in schoolwork. Their after-school activities can be a place where they drop all their stress and be fully engaged in a sport and activity. Cutting what students find to be most enjoyable would only create more stress and depression. The next possible solution was to give students less homework but make it more challenging. In theory, this would reduce the amount of time which would reduce stress, but challenging problems would in fact take just as long, if not longer. This would in turn keep the stress levels just as high. Another possible solution is to change school schedules so that there are fewer classes a day, therefore less homework each night. Schools would be able to shorten the number of classes each day, but the time in class would be longer. Students would have more than just one night to complete the homework, which would seem like they have more time, or they would have more time to complete it. But more material would be crammed into each class to make up for not meeting every day, and so therefore the homework would be equivalent. This would seem to trick students into thinking they would be less stressed when really they won't be. Stress relieving activities such as yoga and meditation was another possible solution. These are great stress relieving activities, but they would take up valuable time in the day where students could be working on homework or studying. Therefore, this is not the solution we were looking for, but we would highly recommend these activities if time allows. One last solution is for teachers to give a short test to students to determine how much homework they would have. This would be beneficial because if students know the material, they would not have to worry about as much homework. However, this is unfair to students who don't understand it as much, because more homework would be given to those who do not understand. It is not fair for one student to be more stressed than the other. The best possible solution we established as a group is that teachers should collaborate with one another when assigning homework. Instead of having assignments in 5 to 7 classes each night, depending on how many you take, teachers could agree to only assign 2 or 3 assignments each night and then rotate every few days. This would allow kids to not be bogged down by homework each night, and they would still be able to participate in extracurricular activities and not have to worry about when their homework will be completed. It gives students enough homework to where they are still working hard but not overwhelmed and stressed out. Taking all these solutions into consideration, we decided that this is the best way to combat teen stress. It would allow kids to go to each class every day, but not have to worry about staying up late, doing homework, but still be able to participate in extracurriculars worry-free.
It is evident that students today have an immense amount of stress on them. For many students, this strain is too much and is very harmful to their health. There have been many proposals to try various different strategies to relieve stress. Some of these tactics may just not prove to be successful even if they were implemented. This is because many require total participation and attention from not only the administration, counselors, and teachers, but also the students. It is possible to encourage the students to manage their stress, but that does not mean they will automatically be willing to use the available stress relievers to do so. Overall, it is apparent that students these days have a ridiculous amount of homework to do. They no longer are able to do extracurricular activities as well as homework every night and achieve a healthy amount of sleep. Many students are stuck studying away into the late hours of the night, stressing over the abundant amount of schoolwork that is assigned. Not only do students typically go to school for around 7 hours a day, they also are expected to go home and do more schoolwork. This leaves little to no downtime for students to relax and enjoy some quality time away from stressful studying. This very stressful burden can have some very harsh consequences, including physical and mental health issues. These health issues include anxiety and depression, which in all circumstances is never a good thing to have. In order to rid the immense amount of pressure on students, something has to change. As many people would agree, schoolwork is and always will be the most important thing a teenager can do. Getting good grades is a crucial necessity to getting into a good college. So one of the only things a teenager spends the majority of their time doing other than schoolwork and would be extracurricular activities. These are also a very good attribute to have when applying for a good college. So making cuts when it comes to outside activities is a possibility, but it would also be a major problem. The activities that students do outside of school are a very helpful tool that students use to help relieve all that built-up stress from schoolwork. So in order to find a good compromise, students need to remember that school always comes first no matter what. With that in mind, though, they can achieve both a less stressful life and a life outside of the classroom, including extracurricular activities. But in order to achieve that, the best possible solution would be to have the teachers themselves collaborate amongst one another and find out when the others plan on assigning homework. This should create a more balanced schedule for students to better balance all their activities with schoolwork. In return, giving them more time each night to have some downtime to relax and enjoy themselves. This will help lift the heavy burden that large amounts of stress create. With this compromise, students will no longer be stuck studying away till the later hours of the night. This will allow them to finally get the crucial amount of sleep needed to stay healthy. Other ideas for consideration, however successful they may be, are unlikely to become integrated into schools due to lack of desire and shortage of resources. Schools today do not have the time, money, or manpower to conduct any other possible solutions to the problem. With this in mind, having the teachers talk to each other is not only the easiest, but also the most effective.
Thank you.